have a secret.
Yeah, I got a secret too.
I'm Adam Maness.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And that wasn't planned.
Well, like usual?
No, I know they're never planned, but you really got me on that one. That was so creepy. I mean, I started the creep, and then you upped the ante of creep, and it got me. You got me.
Well, what people don't realize is after we do those little pithy, witty intros that are totally unplanned. I mean, they're unplanned.
Cringy.
They're unplanned to the point of we don't even know who's going to start. That's what. But then afterwards, while you hear the music, while that glorious song goes on, we kind of look at each other and make a decision. Are we going to keep that one? We usually do keep them. So today was definitely like...
We almost never don't keep them, which is remarkable because of how bad they are.
Hey, we'll let our public tell us that.
So you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Daily jazz advice coming at you.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by the Oxford American. The Oxford American is a magazine dedicated to documenting the complexity and vitality of the American South. Its award-winning annual music issue comes with a CD sampler and digital download. It's a must-have for any serious music fan. Recent issues have featured Nina Simone, John Cage, Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane. Visit oxfordamerican.org/YHI today. That's oxfordamerican.org/YHI.
Yeah, and just to say real quick, Oxford American for the serious music fan, for the serious literary fan, fan of literature, fan of travel, especially U.S. travel in the South, North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, that kind of thing. Florida, what you know about Florida, my home state, where you at? But great folks, and so glad to be associated with them. Today, we are giving people
creepy secret advice.
That's right. 7 secret ways to practice scales. They're not going to be a secret anymore.
Clickbaity, cringy, secret.
That's how we do it. Well, we started this whole You'll Hear It adventure. It was we do kind of make fun of the clickbait, but our whole concept was that we're going to do clickbait, but we're going to actually give them what we're saying. Yeah, I don't think we've ever not done that.
We're trying to be a little tongue-in-cheek with the clickbait titles.
A little?
I mean...
By its very nature, it's entirely.
We should try to go more over the top, though, so that it's more obvious that we are.
Well, you know what I feel like we used to do? I don't know if we did, but we talked about doing like 7 secret ways to practice scales. And number 5 is going to blow your mind.
Number 3 is going to break your wrist.
I know. Yeah, so we never do that where it's inaccurate. Because, I mean, the reason we don't add the other part is to be like, number 3 is going to really help your development. Number 4 is going to get you a gig at the Wiki room at the Ramada Inn by the airport. I mean, hey, don't sleep at the Ramada Inn.
That's good. Well, okay. we got a couple of emails about, and I get asked all the time from some of our open studio members, like, how do I practice scales? We actually have a part of one of our courses, the Elements of Jazz Piano, which is our very fine intermediate course, jazz piano course.
Right down the middle.
We have something called Creative Scale Practice, where we do a lot of these things we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think, practicing scales is something that can seem tedious, but there are several different ways to do it, that it's not just this like up and down linear motion, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so hopefully today we can shed some light on some of those. And I know we've covered some of these before, but we haven't done it all 7. So hopefully we can.
And I would just want to say too, like if we think about a mindset of creativity and openness and adventure, as we go through all these, I think it will help folks, because practicing scales is something that I think you're going to want to do for the rest of your life as a pianist. There's a lot of value to it, even after you feel like you've mastered the scales, which I do think is important. But it does become tedious, and it doesn't need to be. You know, like I realized something this morning. I was at, the weather's been a little bit funky here. So I've been doing some indoor at the gym kind of running, and I was on the treadmill, and I was doing some interval miles. After the first mile, I was like, oh man, I can't do another mile. And I felt just exhausted. And I look over there, and there's like this indoor track that's kind of short. I never really use it. I said, let me just change things up.
Yeah.
See, and as soon as I got on that, I felt so much better. So
I
thought I was
like 8th mile, 10th
mile.
mile.
It's like 7.5 laps equals a mile, and you think it's going to be a drag, but it was just different. So sometimes just a mindset of like, let me try something different, and then all of a sudden, because you think that you're exhausted at doing something, and the same thing with scale preg. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. Look at it a different way. Try it a different way.
That's right.
And there's these ways, and then there's others.
So number one, I love what you put for number one, which is to practice the scales slowly.
Yes.
So often we're trying to push the boundaries of what we can do, for speed,
Yeah.
that we tend to neglect what might be even more important, which is getting a good sound.
Yes.
And to do that, you have to practice slowly.
You have to practice slowly. And then there can be some challenges too when you practice slowly that are unexpected, especially on scales that you feel like you've mastered. What I'll do is when I go through, and I actually do a lot of my scale practice when I do it slowly, almost all of it at this point is just like, that's the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah.
And then, working in some of these things we'll talk about later, when you're playing slowly, you can really concentrate on articulation and sound and evenness, because you're playing slowly, but you're not playing out of time.
Right. And that's the important part. Sound, articulation, evenness. That's something that gets neglected if you're just trying to push the metronome up and up and up.
And sometimes you don't notice it as much when you're playing faster. So this is a time to really be critical and evaluate. A lot of people avoid this because it's difficult, actually.
It's very hard.
And it's exposing. It can kind of expose you for the fraud that you are.
And maybe you think like, I'm not making gains, but
No,
you are. You're
exactly.
making more gains than you think you are, especially if you're concentrating on getting things nice and even with the articulation that you hear. So it's like literally from your brain to your hands to the instrument is uninterrupted and is exactly the sound you want to try to get. That's the important thing, the control.
Are you saying you'll hear it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you practice slowly, you'll hear it. Yeah.
Okay.
What do we got?
We got 6 more though.
What do we got for number 2?
Number 2. Well, this one's yours, but I'm going to pick up on it. Thirds.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love practicing in thirds. This is really a way, thirds or tenths. What do you think?
Both.
Yeah, I've always done more tenths than thirds, but yeah, thirds can be really good too. But the idea is that you are maybe automating and challenging yourself, but automating some of the fingering. At first, kind of seeing if you really know it as well as you think that you know it. Sometimes when we only practice, sort of parallel, same motion, then we think, okay, I know all these fingerings really well, and I have those automated. But then when you change up something and they're coming out of order in terms of hands together, and obviously if you're practicing thirds or tenths, this is hands together practice, then you realize, your fingerings are getting off and stuff. And so it's a way to really challenge yourself. And you can move it up to other intervals too, as well. It can really be any interval. You can practice in 7, 6, and all these, especially like diminished scales work well to go to some funny intervals. Yeah. But it's just a way to challenge yourself to make sure you're going automatically to the correct fingering.
That's right. And, it helps address some situations. Like, so if you practice on the piano, if you practice in octaves or 2 octaves apart, that has useful applications, right? If you want to solo with 2 hands, very useful. But then if you go to do thirds and you haven't practiced scales at all in thirds, there's a huge disconnect.
Yes.
And you have to be exposed, as you were saying, like one of your hands has to be on autopilot. You can't be thinking about both simultaneously at the same time. It's just impossible. So getting a good practice routine with scales and thirds, and like you said, 6 is later down for me, which now we could just skip right over that.
Oh, good. I'm bored.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, and you know what? We were accused in a comment recently of being a piano-centric podcast.
2 comments.
Point taken. 2 comments.
Yeah. So we're just stepping into that now.
So, but we'll just say, okay, obviously practicing slow. I think all these actually apply to everybody, all instruments. You might think, okay, how can I practice in thirds? Broken thirds, exactly.
Broken 6, broken fifths.
Yeah. So it's not just for pianists and hands alone. Obviously, for if you're a horn player, singer, you're doing 1 note at a time. But there's ways to apply all these things. And again, it's about changing up, your mindset to challenge yourself in some different ways. And I mean, fingering is different but it does apply to many instruments. It doesn't apply to vocalists. It applies to a trumpet player. When you're working on different fingerings and stuff, saxophone and those kind of things.
So number 3, we have articulation. Very, very important thing to practice in your scale practice, even if that's the only thing you're focusing on.
Man, I love art. I was at the art museum the other day. Is that the same thing? No.
There's
sorry.
A pun machine over there today, aren't you?
It's Friday, man. It's hump day. I'm excited.
We're
humping right into the weekend now. It's that bridge between the week to the...
Everybody heard that? Everybody heard that? No, so articulation... Practice the duration of your notes, not just super legato and super staccato, but everything in between. If you're practicing slow, you have a variety of da, 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 these breaks that can happen. Practice doing that.
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from a piano teacher, I think I was at the New School, I forget who said it, but was when the back end of the note is as important, if not more important, than the attack. When you release the key, is as important. So practice releasing. Don't just let your finger, attack at the right rate, and then you're just willy-nilly lifting your hand everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like it. So, and that's another thing along with evenness that we were talking about, rhythmic evenness, but also evenness within the articulation. And then this is definitely an area we can get creative in terms of staccato, legato, spiccato, marcato.
Spiccato.
How about a little diminished scale marcato practice? That'll send you to Wikipedia pretty damn quickly.
Number 4 is 6, and we covered that. So moving on.
Right. And so I'd just say too that like we were talking about, diminished are really good for the different intervals. You can do any interval, 6,
minor 6, major 6.
Yep.
So good. Number 5 is contrary motion. This really is applicable to piano only, and it's really really cool, very helpful.
Maybe vibraphone.
Yeah, but that'd be anyway.
Yeah.
But you know what's cool about practicing contrary motion?
Synthesizer.
You could practice. I'm just going to barrel through and just ignore you. You could practice starting on the same note, like if you do like a C major scale up and down 2 octaves, contrary motion. You could start on a C,
Celesta,
or you could start on like a C and E.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
organ.
You could do a 6 and start. And do contrary
Catholic
motion.
organ.
Okay.
I'm just naming other things that it does apply to. You said it was only pianists. Harpsichord. Clavichord.
Number 6. What?
We said that. Glockenspiel.
Yeah.
Glockenspiel.
TGIF, folks.
That's right.
TGIF.
Okay, number 6. Over changes.
Scale running. This is what I was thinking.
Yes, I love this.
Right?
This I always forget about. And I never did this a lot. You've talked about this a lot. And so this is what I'm going to work into my routine, because it just has never been a part of my routine. But I mean, it probably opens up more possibilities than any of these that we're talking about, right?
And if you take like a modal tune, like one finger snap, and you set a metronome and you run scales over the changes, changing when the changes change, and then changing direction, improvising when you change direction, it's going to be eye-opening about like being able to hit those transitions. It's going to really help on your improvising, when you're trying to get long, elegant phrases, being able to link those scales together.
And what would be cool is like you start going up in one direction over the chord, and then snap your fingers, come down, one finger snap. Okay,
it's a pun machine, folks.
No, but I think too and the next level with this, I'm seeing incorporating that along with some of these other things like broken thirds and stuff like
totally.
Two hands. Don't sleep on the 2 hands even over a tune. That's something that Jeff Keyser probably does.
For sure. I mean, broken 7th chords, you know,
and slowly on a ballad, you can run through some scales, and that's really putting it in a place that like this is the kind of thing you'd want to practice, a way to practice scales when you're really like, oh, I'm exhausted with scales. I really don't want to do it, because it places it more in music than in any of the other ones.
Pick one of your favorite tunes and run the changes, not stopping, just playing over, switching the scale when appropriate.
Yep. So what? That's what I'll do it on.
That's boring.
That would be boring.
What do you got for number 7?
Number 7, practice in your sleep.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
That's a secret way. Okay. Now, you might ask, what are you talking about? Perhaps ask me that.
Hey, Pete.
Hey.
What are you talking about?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked. Thank you, Adam. So what I mean is like, this is actually a little bit inaccurate to say in your sleep that you're going to practice it, but you want to learn these scales on your instrument, all the applicable scales, so that if somebody comes, if Adam, scary Adam, big Adam, before Adam lost his weight, and with the beard and everything, came and broke in your house,
this is great.
and woke you up and was like, C diminished scale, contrary motion right now, and like shoved a keyboard into your hands, then you'd be able to do it. When you had a gun to your head, even.
Can we tone it down a bit?
Sorry. I got excited there. But what I mean is you can wake up and that these things automatically, because that's how we need to know scales. You got to be able to play them in your sleep.
That's true. That is true.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
not the part
the
about
scenario was terrifying.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. But I mean, under pressure, like know them so well.
That's
so
true.
All these other ways of practicing them, know that the goal is that you can play them in your sleep.
Yeah, and for that too, I think an important thing is get the right fingering on these scales. Check out the McFerrin manual for fingering.
I like dogmatic, Adam.
No, I'm serious.
I know.
Because if your fingering isn't correct on like some of the, especially the flat scales or whatever, it's going to get sticky.
Right.
You know what I'm
All right. Well, there you go. 7 secret ways to practice scales. We hope you enjoy this. Let us know if you have any other ones. We'd love to hear them.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday. Hump Day.
Thanks to all our You'll Hear It listeners. We love you guys.
We do love you. And we have 2 reviews I wanted to read. And one is came via text message. I didn't know if you know that we can receive text messages.
Via text message?
Yeah. The first one, though, is on the Apple Podcast. And this is Fabulous Daily Piano Advice is the title, 5 stars. This podcast is first rate and deserves 7 stars. Both hosts have a passion. Oh, did I read this one already? Both hosts have a passion for the piano and jazz. Great
Yes.
topics. Okay, sorry.
I mean, now you're literally repeating reviews, buddy.
Okay, here's a. Oh yeah, and I did the one about it not being much of an investment of time. Sorry.
Amazing.
These are some really great. Let me see if I can find.
I love how prepared we are for this show.
Okay, well, let me read the text message one.
Okay.
And this is from.
It's like a personal text message?
Yeah, and this is from kind of a famous jazz musician. Can I mention her name?
Please do.
Okay. This is text message. Enjoying your podcasts. My favorite part is the first 10 seconds. Smiley face winking emoji.
Oh, because she likes your tune.
Yeah, okay. No, I think she likes the back and forth thing.
Ah.
Okay, the rest is awesome too. That is from the great Anat Cohen, listener of the podcast.
That makes me so happy
You know what I'm
because
saying?
I just am such a huge fan. I'm such a huge fan of her music and of her.
Yeah, she's great.
She's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We had her on the other podcast. We'll have to get her on.
We had her on the process. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And now
Yeah,
defunct.
She was just here in St. Louis. We didn't have
I
her
know.
on.
We
That
slept on that.
was a big whiff from us. Well, thank you, Nat.
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to the Oxford American.
That's right. This is our 3rd week of sponsorship, I believe. Is that correct?
They're great, man.
Yeah.
Make sure to
with
at least
us.
go check out the website. It's incredible writing about Southern culture, and there's a lot of music, especially Southern music, and it's so applicable to what we're doing here and music you probably play.
But it's not like the Allman Brothers. Nothing wrong with the Allman Brothers.
There's some of that stuff.
There's some of
that.
I mean, when you say Southern music, sometimes people immediately think of that.
It's more roots music.
More
it's more
roots,
music that has supplied American music for the last 100 years. You know?
Not Air Supply, but
some of that.
Some of that, really?
No, not really.
It's diverse.
For a limited time, You'll Hear It listeners can subscribe to the Oxford American for only $25. Visit oxfordamerican.org/YHI to subscribe today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, until tomorrow. Till Monday.
Oh, You'll Hear It.